Hardcore racists, what pivotal moment made you change your ways? Watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air made me hate them even more. I lived in a primarily white neighborhood, where there weren't a lot of black people. I was going to school and spending my days just like I was when I was 13, but one day, a boy called Joey came to our class. Joey was black. In fact, I think he was the only black person in our entire school. He was already a sore thumb sticking out, but he was really just an ordinary boy just like me, having similar interests like sports, comic books, and video games. But the 13-year-old me didn't understand that. In my eyes, Joey looked repulsive somehow. I thought he was unnatural. I obviously didn't hate him. It was just that I for some reason felt disgusted by him. He was black. It wasn't just me that felt this way. A lot of my classmates gossiped about him too, seemingly sharing my opinion. Thinking we should play a prank on him, we started to harass him almost every day. We would hide his school bag, give him funny names, and make noises behind him while we sat in class. We thought it was all fun and games, but in reality, this was just plain bullying and nothing else. But Joey took it all. He was never really riled up every time something like this happened. Neither did he call for anyone. He just silently endured until everyone stopped doing it as they got bored of it. I too stopped, but my repulsion never vanished. I simply started to avoid Joey, trying to think that he was not there. This was about the time Fresh Prince of Bel-Air started airing. I didn't like the show at first when it first aired, this being for the same reason as why I didn't like Joey, as I felt repulsed by the black actors. If anything, it enhanced my hatred towards people like Joey. But my mother really liked the show, and since we only had one TV and I was addicted to the TV, I had no other choice but to watch it with my mother until I too started to actually like the show as well. I ended up getting over my repulsion of the black actors, but not against black people in real life. A few weeks after I started watching with my mother, I noticed that the episodes were leaving subliminal messages about racism within the show. There was this one episode where Will talks with Carlton about their trip in the car, and Will starts to flip out about the police stopping the both of them. Due to Carlton's rich upbringing, he is oblivious as to what racial profiling or discrimination is. He had never experienced what Will dealt with while living in the city. I don't know why this scene stuck with me so much, or why as a child it had that much of an impact on me, but I thought it about for a week later and would stay up at night thinking about it while also thinking about all those other things I had done to Joey and how he must have felt and why I did those things when he never did anything to me. I pondered on these thoughts for a month until I couldn't take it anymore. I decided that, on my lunch break, I was going to talk to Joey. Our school had a lot more black people in it at that time, but Joey still was the only black person in our class. He was a loner too, as he never seemed to have attempted to talk to anyone, nor did anyone else look to have approached him. I found him sitting in the cafeteria by himself eating a radish sandwich. I knew that since I ate those too. They were my favorite. I didn't know how to approach him or how to talk to him. I felt incredibly awkward doing what I was about to do. I purposely made sure to do it on my lunch break, as I made sure nobody knew that I was going to talk to Joey. Eventually, I got over my awkwardness and came over intending to talk to him by sitting next to him. Joey immediately noticed me when I sat near him, but didn't say anything other than glance at me before returning back to his sandwich. The entire lunch break passed without us talking. The next day, I decided to do the same. I sat down, he noticed me, and we both ate our lunch. Nothing was said. This continued for 4 days. But finally, after the 5th day, I finally just wanted this to get over with, and when lunch break came around I again sat next to him with my own lunch and immediately spoke before he could start eating. I took a deep breath and said, "I am sorry." "What?" "I am sorry." For what?" "I am sorry for doing the things I did to you." He paused. "Ah, okay." He started eating. I, not eating at all, still waited as I expected to hear something else, but I never did. He simply ate while I looked at him waiting for the words I expected to hear. He too noticed me staring at me expectantly and stopped eating before turning to me. "What?" he said. "So you forgive me?" No." I was dumbfounded and had no idea what to say next. Joey too didn't seem to want to talk anymore and simply finished his lunch while I did too. For the next week, I pretty much pondered about what to do next. Joey had refused my apology and I was clueless as to what to do. Because of that, I simply continued to have my lunch with Joey every day since I got used to it. We also started talking, not about the apology, but just talking about hobbies like comics and video games. My repulsion towards him also disappeared as I started to understand Joey as a person more than something else. Before I knew it, we became pretty tight friends. We would go over to each other's houses and play. My original friends also became more friendly with Joey once I started to invite and play with him more. This continued until our high school years and even until university, as both me and Joey attended the same university studying different fields. I studied biology, and he studied chemistry. We stayed friends our entire life. Joey had married recently and asked me to become his best man. I told this same story at his wedding. But after the partying, drinking, and celebration, Joey and I ended up on a balcony, watching over the party. There was something itching in the back of my mind. It was something that had been bothering me since Joey and I had first become friends. I took a deep breath and asked, "Joey, do you forgive me?" "For what?" "For the things I did to you." He paused. "No. I still do not forgive you." I could see the look on his face. He was looking out onto the sunset. "You are my best friend. I will never forgive you. I will hold this grudge until we both become rotten old men." I could see the smirk on his face. I laughed and gave him a web on his arm. I gave him a big hug. If you had told my 12-year-old self that I would befriend Joey, then I would laugh in your face. But here I am, and now, he is getting married. Joey is my best friend. I made a joke when my son came out to me. So, I've always known my son had an interest in men. When he was younger, he'd prefer all the traditionally feminine things like Barbies and makeup. He would also play fashion show with things he took from my closet. And as he grew older, he was slow on the pickup of incognito mode, and from the searches he made, I figured he was at least bi-curious, if that's the proper term for it, since he hit puberty. I've never had anything against the community, we live in a pretty accepting town, so he didn't have to worry about me thinking otherwise. Well, last year, he started bringing a boy around, and it was obvious they were dating, to the point I figured that he knew I knew, and it wasn't a big deal to anyone. Well, apparently, I was wrong. After school yesterday, he and his boyfriend came up to me and said there was something really important they needed to tell me. My son said that they were dating and had been for a year. Well, I was surprised that he wasn't aware I knew and was a bit thrown off. My mouth moved faster than my brain and I said, well, that's pretty effing gay. Now, I thought it was peak comedy, since it is in fact gay. However, I understand using the word gay in that way gives it a very negative undertone, hence the mouth faster than brain comment. Now my son and I are usually pretty edgy with our humor, this being fairly tame for the stuff we joke about. While probably not appropriate for the situation, it wasn't our norm for a conversation between us. However, he and his boyfriend were very, very upset and left. He currently won't respond to my texts or calls.
I'm a lesbian woman who is in love with my male best friend of 25 years. Today, I confessed my love to him. My best friend James and I grew up together in a conservative Christian town. He was always kind, loyal, and accepting, even when I came out as gay in our teens. After high school he went away to college, but we stayed close. When my parents kicked me out for being gay, he immediately came to support me. Over the years he's continued to be my rock through good times and bad. Now at 27, I'm battling cancer. He visits me in the hospital every single day, providing comfort and hope. All my other friends come far less often. My mom has always thought I should marry James. Though I've never been attracted to men, my feelings for him are different. I love him deeply and can imagine a happy life with him in a way I haven't with anyone else. A few days ago my mom told me, baby, in all my years on this earth, I've never seen anyone love anybody like that boy loves you. I know you don't like it when I talk about this, but trust me, if you let him go again you're gonna regret it forever. I knew she was right. With my health improving, I wanted to tell James the first love him and want to be with him if I survive. But I was scared to change our relationship during my cancer battle. He means everything to me and I can't imagine life without him. However, my mom encouraged me to talk to him, so today I told James. I told him everything. Gosh. I just wish I could relive this night over and over again. I've never been so happy. He came into my room this evening like he always does. He walked in and said, hello, how's my amumu doing today? I told him I was doing well. He told me I looked beautiful. Which is not true, but it still felt so sincere. Then he started unpacking the stuff he brought me today. I asked him to stop and just come sit with me because I wanted to talk to him. He nodded and came and sat down next to me. What's up? He asked. It took me a bit to gather myself. I kept getting distracted by his eyes. How he looks at me sometimes, I don't know how to describe it. I told him I love you. He just kind of laughed and touched my hand before casually responding, oh I know that, I love you too. In retrospect this wasn't the best way to start since we've said that enough with a different understanding. He started to get up again to unpack the snacks and I grabbed his arm and asked him to let me finish. He looked confused but he nodded and sat back down. And then I did it. I told him everything. I told him about all the times in the past I'd thought about just marrying him despite being gay. I told him my favorite memories of him and how they make me feel. How he'd always been my best friend and the person I trusted the most. How I made a mistake and I should have chosen him. I told him he's the face I see when I think about feeling loved, and the embrace I feel when I think about being safe. I confessed that it doesn't matter what we do, if we're together I'm happy and he's the only thing I want for the rest of my life. He basically froze. He said nothing. He just looked at me as I spilled everything. I don't think he even blinked. When I finished and looked up at him, he was sitting there like a statue with his mouth slightly open, like he forgot to breathe. James always knows what to say, so this was a little unnerving to me. I started to ask him if everything was alright, but before I could finish his expression broke. He exhaled into a weak but incredibly tender, quivering smile. He just reached out and pulled me into a hug. I buried my head in his chest and his arms just wrapped around me. I just melted into him. He was so gentle. It felt so easy. It felt so right. Then he started crying, and then I started crying. He's been coming here through 2 years of cancer treatment and I have never seen him cry till now. He held me for a while, but however long it wasn't long enough. He still hadn't actually said a single word since I finished talking, but I guess he didn't really need to. Then he finally answered my question with, now it is. When he finally pulled away, his face was red from crying, but he just looked so happy. He looked at me for a bit. It was kinda cute because he had a little trouble maintaining eye contact, which he usually doesn't. He was like a little boy again. Then he finally looked right at me and just said, you are the only person I've ever wanted. Then I started crying again and he started crying again and he pulled me to him and held me again. I wish it never ended. A little bit later, once we exhausted our crying capacity, I showed him the post I had previously made asking for advice. He made a few jokes about wanting to meet this James guy and about how he had better go and thank my mom for her 20-year wingwomanship loan. Then after he finished reading it, he kissed me. It felt easy, not scary at all. It felt just right. He asked me if it lived up to my daydreams and I chuckled and said yes. Then he said I'm not so sure myself, I think I need more data, and kissed me again. Then after that we started talking, and I guess he told me everything too. He said he'd loved me since we were little kids. Told me he still has every drawing, letter, and craft I ever made for him in a safe that he took with him to college. He told me he has taken it everywhere he's ever lived. We talked about the day I came out as gay to him, and how he'd figured it out earlier. He confessed that he had struggled to accept it for months in secret because he had lived his entire life up to that point assuming we would be a family and wanting nothing else. He told me he thought about our last night before college all the time. He had kept hoping that entire night I'd say something before he left, because then he'd have transferred colleges to stay with me. He told me he actually took a very long way home just to prolong the time when we were holding hands and I was sleeping on his shoulder. He said that it was, to this day, his favorite memory. Then he looked at me with those piercing green eyes and said, for me there has never been anyone else. He loved me once and then struggled through a bunch of rebounds. He confessed that even though he had learned to bury it and move on with life and was happy in our friendship, his heart had only ever belonged to me. I guess I should have known this, but I was flustered. I joked that he should enter the Olympics as a torch carrier and he said they'd never have a chance. I'm the greatest there ever was. My heart just kept melting. We sat and talked and reminisced some more, mostly about when we were kids. Then he sang me some of our songs. We had another embrace and another kiss. Both still felt divine. I can't wait to have my hair back again so he can pet it like he used to when we were kids. Then I brought up the intimacy question, and it was the cutest thing ever. I barely got to say anything before he started tripping over himself like, look, I don't even care. I don't need that. If we need mistresses or something, we can do that. It doesn't bother me, I just want to wake up with you every day. It was sweet. But then I told him that even though I didn't know how being intimate with him would go, I wanted to try with him anyway when I got better. Oh my God. He turned tomato red and could barely look at me. Literally could not even manage to form a sentence in response. He just mumbled incoherently before managing to get out okay, if you're sure. This man has been married and had 6 girlfriends, but he completely just falls all over himself at the thought. God, it was adorable. This is the only thing I'm still a little worried about, but I do want to try. I mean, I like the kissing, which I thought was completely impossible. And I know that if it doesn't turn out well, it won't ruin anything and we'll still be together and just figure something else out for that one need. Then we talked about the cancer. He is so sure I'm gonna make it. It's so touching. It took a little while to get him to take the other possibilities seriously. When I got him to take it seriously, I told him that it was the reason I didn't tell him sooner. He held my hand and told me that if that happens, he'd be okay because he'll always know that he was one of the lucky ones because he was mine. Jesus Christ, I almost lost it. Then he said that if we don't have that much time left, we better make sure every minute counts. I said, that's pretty hard to do in a hospital, and he replied, what do you mean? We're both here and that makes this the best place on earth. Dear God, what did I do to deserve this man? I teared up again and he held me one last time. Then the doctors came in. He kissed me goodnight. We both said I love you, but it felt so different. It's never felt so good to say or hear those words. Then he smiled at me and left. I was so excited. The first thing I did was call Mom and she was just ecstatic. I think she might be happier than me, which is saying something. As soon as I told her what happened and that James and I are together, she just started crying. She kept talking about what a good boy he is, how she just knew this would happen and that she can rest easy now because she knows I will always be loved and taken care of. Plenty of her destiny talk, which usually gets on my nerves, but honestly I didn't mind it this time. Maybe it was destiny. I guess sometimes Mom really does know best. I feel like a teenager again. I never thought I'd feel this way again in my life. I never imagined if I did, it would be for a man. God, I love him so much. Now I can't understand what I was ever worried about or why I didn't do this years ago. Now as long as my health cooperates, I'll be one of the lucky ones too, because I am his.
When was a time you got rejected by your spouse's parents then proved them wrong? My high school sweetheart and I are from 2 very different backgrounds. I lived in a trailer park with alcoholic parents who worked in carpet mills. She lived in an exclusive neighborhood and went to private schools. Her parents were white collar. Her dad was a chemist and her mom was a teacher. We had been dating for 2 years. I was invited to all her family functions and overnight trips. I didn't invite her to any of my family functions because I was embarrassed of all the alcoholics and rednecks in my family. I got to see how the upper classes lived. We were so compatible. Never had an argument. Always respected her parents. Her brother enjoyed hanging out with me. We were making plans to attend college together. This happened right before prom. 2 days before, her father called me and asked if we could meet for lunch. We've done this several times. I said sure. He picks me up and we go to a popular local restaurant. Good company and good conversation. Life is good. Her father asked me the usual questions about how my family is doing and how life is in general. He then proceeds to tell me that I am no longer allowed to date his daughter any longer. He told me that he doesn't feel that I could give her the lifestyle she deserves. No apologies. No other explanations. Nothing. Shook my hand and wished me luck in life and left me at the restaurant. Talk about a bombshell. I was so shell-shocked that I sat there for almost an hour. I had to call my cousin to pick me up since I was about 18 miles from my home. My girlfriend refused my phone calls. I went to prom without her, hoping to talk to her, but I wasn't allowed inside her school because she had the tickets and I didn't have $30 to buy a ticket. I didn't see her again until 2006. I had gone on to have multiple successful companies, and now had more money than I could ever spend. My oldest daughter was graduating high school. I didn't send my daughter to private school because I wanted her to have diversity in her classes. However, I was surprised to see my ex-girlfriend there. Apparently, her son was also in my daughter's graduating class. My daughter graduated 4th in her class while her son was somewhere in the middle. I was surprised to see her son in a public school. I found out she has been married 3 times and has 2 children. She lives with her parents and works as a secretary at a local home pesticide company. That was the lifestyle I couldn't provide. Who is the worst person you have ever met? I met my ex-girlfriend Renee 4 years ago when we were 17 and 16 in particular. We were off and on because it was toxic and we weren't best suited. She was always drinking and going out with other people and couldn't be bothered with me unless she had a bad day. She constantly went out drinking, sending explicit pics to other guys, sleeping with others and then blaming it on assault so I wouldn't freak out. And I handled it poorly by being strict and creating rules and being way too overprotective of her, which I can admit is my bad. But she always made me the source of her issues and blamed me for her parents hating her, her sister being mean to her, not having a social life, even though I stopped her from taking her life when I met her, helped her finish high school, and helped her get a scholarship to my local university. We finally broke up when she moved here for college from a few states away almost 2 years ago, when she at 19 started dating a minor behind my back. I went on with my life and she went on with hers. I met somebody and we had a perfectly healthy relationship and she brought out the best in me and made me become a better person until a month ago when I lost her in an intoxicated driving accident. I grieved as I needed and continued trying to do better like she always wanted for me. Flash forward a week ago when Renee and I ran into each other and started talking again, told her how my life was going, she talked about hers. And we started being friends again. She knew I was grieving and at first was incredibly sympathetic and I figured we could have a good friendship. After a day she started comparing me to her new boyfriend and making fun of me for things I lacked and would rub in my face how better he is at everything compared to me. The shoe dropped when she started rubbing in my face about sleeping with him and how it must suck knowing I can't again with my ex. I'm fine with being insulted but bringing her up knowing my pain pushed a line. I told her to knock it off and don't talk about it and she proceeded to treat me like a client at her job. She helps mentally disabled people and knows I have a slight disability, and kept telling me that if I don't want to be talked to like that then stop telling her what to do. She gets intoxicated one night and starts yelling at me about our relationship and all the issues she endured for being with me. I apologized and made my amends because I can agree I wasn't always the best. Never expected her to apologize for hers but made clear how sorry I was for my part as I know I wasn't always correct, and she finally went to bed. Next night she calls me at 1 a.m. She gets incredibly intoxicated again. Her boyfriend is with her, starts calling me names. She makes comments that she's gonna keep screwing her boyfriend and I can't have intimacy with my ex anymore, to where I make a comment of that's nice, now if only he could satisfy, which brought her boyfriend into a rage and threatening to shoot me, and then Renee pipes up and says that my ex's death was for the better as being with me is a worse fate than what happened to her. They both were college students living in the dorm on scholarships. The college has a rule against alcohol and you will lose your scholarship if caught with it. So I contacted the police, gave them her dorm number, explained she's underage drinking, her boyfriend is supplying the alcohol, and she's currently sleeping in the dorm with him. Police show up, dorm roommates let them in, knock on the door, catch her intoxicated with all sorts of alcohol from over state lines and catch them both obviously sleeping while she's drunk. She ends up charged with underage drinking, he's charged with giving alcohol to a minor and is looking at added assault charges because he got her intoxicated and then slept with her while she's under the legal age. And both of their scholarships were lost and were expelled and now both have to leave town and they both live in entirely different states.